Good afternoon, everybody. Hello, my name's Steve. I hope colleagues can hear okay. We should have a couple hundred colleagues who I think have joined us this afternoon. So it's really nice to be able to spend time with you. As I said, my name's Steve. I'm the new Chief Exec here at CDDFT, and it's a real privilege and pleasure to be part of the team here. Thank you for joining. And the first thing to say is please bear with us. So this is our first go at this, and we wanted to try, as part of the priorities that we've set out, to have a more regular opportunity to engage with colleagues across the organisation, to let you know a little bit about what's happening across CDFT, but also dead importantly, and probably more importantly, an opportunity for you to ask us anything that you want to know about, to give us any feedback, to make any comments, and we'll do our very best to answer those either in the meeting or there'll be times where we don't know the answer and we need to come back to colleagues. So I'm joined on this call by my colleague exec directors and really importantly Alison Marshall, who's our new chair. Alison's going to say hello in a few minutes' time. But I thought I would just start, if it was all right, just to say a little bit about how we might try and run these going forward. And as I say, bear with us, this is the first one we have not rehearsed, so what you see is what you get. So as I said, this is part of our attempts to connect better with the organisation. It's not the only way we're going to do it at all. The best way for us to do that. We've got a bit of feedback, apologies. See, I said you might need to bear with us. But the best way for us to connect is by being with you in your places of work, but this is an additional way for us to do it. So you'll be able to submit any questions in advance or anything you want us to update on in advance through the intranet. I'm not entirely sure which bit of the intranet, but we'll make sure that that is clear. But you can also just ask stuff in the meeting, and we're going to make sure that you can ask any questions anonymously. All I'd ask is that people are respectful about the way in which they post. There's no problem with being challenging or anything like that. But if colleagues can just be respectful in the way that they post their questions and comments, that would be super helpful. We're not going to moderate anything, so we'll publish all of your questions that you should be able to see. And as I say, we'll try our best to answer them. So what we'll do normally is we'll spend about 10 or 15 minutes just doing a bit of an update, and it won't always be exec colleagues. If colleagues across the organisation want to share something about what's happening in their service, then just get in touch and we'll make sure we try and put that together as part of the plan. And then, as I say, we'll usually spend about 15 minutes trying to answer the questions that people have popped in the chat box. I will usually nominate one of the colleagues on the call to keep an eye on the questions, and then sort of group them and put them to each of us, as it were. So, and we'll see how we go. If it doesn't work for you, just let us know and we'll try and tweak. We may change the time ever so slightly going forward to probably be around 2 o'clock, because that's a little bit more suitable for clinical colleagues. We just haven't quite managed to land that this week, but thereafter we'll have a consistent time so that it doesn't bump around in people's minds. So all I was going to say by way of my little update was firstly just a huge thank you to everybody who's been in touch, and a bit of an apology as well. So thank you to everyone who's got in touch, given me some feedback, some suggestions, some advice, and offered me the opportunity to come and spend time with you and your teams. I'm Barb's least favourite person at the moment because she is trying to fit all of that into my diary. So please just bear with. We'll try and get all of that set up as soon as we practically can. And if you think we've forgotten about you, just give us a little bit of a nudge. I've really enjoyed spending time with colleagues so far. I've learned loads, and being with colleagues from the front line is very grounding and really helpful because you learn about all the really important things that we might not otherwise see that need our attention. So really appreciative of all of that. The second thing I just want to say before handing over to Alison was just a little bit of a build on what I said in my note out to everybody last week, which is People are working incredibly hard in quite a set of challenging circumstances. And also, we are going to have a few difficult weeks in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks and a little bit beyond. And so I just wanted to let colleagues know what's likely to happen over the next couple of weeks. And we'll talk more about this probably next week. But mentioned, and Alison mentioned in her message, that we've now just got the final report from the review, the external governance review that was done, following on from the issues in our breast service. The review is not of the breast service, it's of the whole organisation and how we've approached the issues, and some other reflection and learning about how we're set up, how we work, what our culture's like, and so on and so forth. We intend to publish that report in full for transparency purposes. And alongside that, we'll also set out what we're going to do about the issues that have been identified. We're intending to do that in our board meeting, which is in a couple of weeks' time. And what that means is that we will publish the report and the response to the report probably around the 20th of November, which is not too far away. As I said, we'll be doing some sessions with colleagues to let you know a bit more about what the report says and how we're going to respond, but actually also more importantly to get your input into how we respond, because you will have much better insight into some of the issues and some of the solutions than necessarily we will. It's important to say it will be a difficult read. A few of us have obviously seen the report now, and it is a tough read. So we'll work our way through that with colleagues across the organisation. But that's one of the key things that will be happening over the next couple of weeks. And then also, we didn't particularly reference this in the note that went out, but there will be a programme that airs on BBC in the North East and then possibly nationally at a later date about some of the issues in our breast service. And that is likely to be around the 28th of November. So again, we'll spend a bit more time talking about all of that and supporting each other through it over the next week. But I wanted to just start to highlight to colleagues some of the things that we'll want to talk about. Anyway, you've heard enough from me. As I say, delighted to be here. Looking forward to working with you all. Please do continue to get in touch, and I'll do my best to respond. I've already got a bit of a backlog. But I'm now going to just hand over to Alison Marshall, our chair, who's going to introduce herself and say a few words, and then she'll hand on to another colleague.
Great. Thank you, Steve, for that. I'm Alison. I'm your new interim chair. Haven't been here very long, haven't had much of a chance to meet with many of you as yet, but I hope to do so over the coming weeks. I thought it might help if I just gave a little bit of an introduction to me and who I am and what drives me. I'm originally a County Durham girl, so I was born in Dryburn. Too many years ago to remember. I went to nursery school in the neighbouring Framlegate Moor. This is a territory that is quite familiar to me. My children were born under the care of this trust. My daughter was born over in Shotley Bridge, and my son was born here at what I still call Dryburn, but University Hospital, North Durham. So I feel like I have a real connection to the trust. I now live up in Northumberland, but this area and the people that we serve down here really do mean something to me. So I think it was important to let you know that. I'm not from the NHS by way of career. I'm a lawyer. I was a partner in a law firm in Newcastle for a number of years. Having retired from that partnership, I was attracted really into the NHS, partly because of its values. I became a non-exec director at Northumbria Healthcare. I was there for 3 years. And then I became the chair of your neighbour, Gateshead Health, just up the road. And I was there for a further 6 years until my term came to an end very recently. And as I say, it was the values of the NHS that attracted me. I'm a very values-driven person. I like the values of the NHS, and I intend to lead this organisation on the basis that we all display those values and we live by them. So just to make it quite clear, that's where I come from, and that's what makes me tick. I'm very conscious that I've joined at a very difficult time for this trust. We're going to go through quite a bit of pain in the next little while, and we have let down our patients, which is not where any of us want to be. But collectively, and it is a collective effort, I do think we can turn this around and we can deliver the kind of quality of care that our patients and our communities deserve. We can make this a great place to work, and we can make it financially sustainable. But we can only do that if we all work together and we all pull in the same direction. So as part of the start to that, we've made some changes at board that you will have seen. That includes bringing in a couple of interim non-exec directors from other local trusts to help us with some of the scrutiny and the challenge that we need around the board table. And that we've also brought in some external advisors, very knowledgeable and proficient in their areas, that can help us with some advice. But in essence, I just want to work with you and with Steve in particular to make sure that this organisation has the right leadership, the right governance, and the right culture to make it as best as it can be. And I look forward to discussing that with you, listening to your views, and working with you in the future. I'll now hand over to Shafi.
Thank you, Alison. Thank you, Steve. Good afternoon, everyone. So I suppose I should introduce myself as well. So my name is Shafi Kamaruddin. I'm a consultant physician. I've been in a CDDFT for the last 11 years. And prior to that, I was a consultant at Friarage and James Cook. I'm very passionate about CDDFT, and I love this trust. And some of you know that I've been the care group director for urgent emergency care as well. But I've also always been a full-time clinician. This is a huge task for me. I'm the acting medical director now, and I'm nervous and I'm anxious, but I know that there's a lot of good people around the organization and that will help me in this post, and the team on the call. So I'm very passionate about what we need to do. There's definitely difficult times ahead of us. There's loads of challenges, but I'm pretty sure that we can work together. And our focus is obviously patient care, safety, quality, and it has to be clinically driven. So we will go back to basics. It's the fundamentals of care, and we will work with you. And I'm at the mercy of you guys really helping me and our team on the call to get us to the right place where we need to be. So I just want to say thank you to everyone, and I'm here to assist in any way I can. So moving forward, I suppose today the pertinent point to discuss really from a medical director point of view really is the issue surrounding industrial action. As you guys are aware, it starts on the 14th of November at 7 a.m. and it will be ending I think at 6:59 a.m. on the 19th of November. As a team, we would like to say a huge thank you to all of you guys throughout the organization who've been working really hard to put a plan in place, especially with the rotas that we need to deliver. But at the heart of it is obviously patient safety. And I think we've tried our level best as well to make sure that planned care is also maintained, particularly with P1, P2, and those of our patients who are on the cancer waiting list over 62 days. So we have, it's imperative that we do honor that. And we've been asked to ensure that there's a minimum of 95% planned activity maintained throughout this period now. So for those areas of service that you feel that there's a risk to deliver this, it's unsafe, there is a process in place through National Derogation Request process where myself and fellow medical directors in the region have a platform to discuss and see what we can do. But beyond that, thank you, for joining the call today. And like Alison and Steve, we are here to help. So, I'm happy to be approached, contacted directly. I'll do my best to live up to the role of an acting MD for the time being. So thank you. I'll hand over to Lorraine.
Thanks, Shafi. Just to follow on, so I'm Lorraine Nelson, Executive Director of Ops, and like Shafi, Alison and Steve, whilst we do have a really difficult period ahead, I think we've got some fantastic teams and we provide some fantastic care, and it's important that we collectively join together in those challenges as we move forward. Shafi touched on some of the risk associated with maintaining that patient safety and particularly amounts of planned care for some of your high priority patients. Again, as Shafi said, just want to reiterate a huge thank you to everyone in the teams. I appreciate there's lots going on, and in amongst that, you're all working really hard to try and maintain those rotas. Please bear with us, because actually as we move forward in the industrial action, there's quite a lot of sit reps or submissions that we're expected to do, both regionally and nationally. Some of that is around actually the safety of the rotas, and some of that is actually around the number of patients that have been impacted as a consequence of actually the changes we've made internally to maintain that patient care. So we have done the first submission around safety. That went in today. There are a couple of areas that are probably still work in progress, and whilst we haven't sought any derogations from a patient risk point of view, we are still working through a couple of key areas within some of the specialties in UEC and medicine, just to make sure that actually we're all comfortable and feel that those medical rosters are safe to provide the levels of care that's expected. The first anticipated activity submission is tomorrow. So we've got to put in there not only patients that we think are going to be cancelled, but also those where actually appointments have been lost or not filled as a consequence of clinics or procedures that have been stood down. As we move through, there are daily requirements. So again, please bear with us as we come out and ask for what might feel like lots of information, but it is really important that internally, if there's any short notice changes, that actually we can adapt and react to that to maintain the level of care that is safe, but also then understand the impact on those patients that perhaps need their care to be deferred. Post the industrial action, we've also got some information that we submit around the overall number of workforce that have attended, but also the number of patients. The comms team will be running the normal communications on a daily basis, and our regional team step up something that's called a strategic coordination centre. That is really around making sure organisationally and system-wide, if there is any short notice changes that might impact wider than just ourselves, there's people outside of the trust as well that we can seek support from. I think the last thing probably for me before I move over to Andrew is really, if you've got any concerns around the industrial action, you're not quite sure, please don't just sit, please just ask. You can ask within your own leadership team, you can reach out to myself and Shafi, and you can always reach out to Adrian Perry, who is our EPRR lead. And I'll just say thank you again for all your efforts before I move you over to Andrew Thacker.
Thanks, Lorraine. Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Andrew Thacker, Director of Workforce and OD. There might be a bit of a clue as to what I'm going to talk about in my background. It's that time of the year again. It's staff survey, and just picking up on the theme that really Steve and Alison have talked about hearing your voice across the organisation, really important. Shafi also mentioned that people are welcome to reach out to us as directors, to line managers. We've got freedom to speak up guardians. Workforce and OD team are always really willing to listen to your stories. But I guess the staff survey is a formal mechanism, if you like, and completely anonymous. But it's certainly just a way that we can gather a feel for how everyone's feeling across the organisation. Give us a steer on some of the things that would make a real difference to you in your working life, that work-life balance, which is really important, and how we operate as an organisation. It is completely anonymous, as I said. We engage with a completely independent organisation, Picker, to do our staff survey. So everybody should have received an email invitation into their inbox to take part in this year's survey. Please do check your junk mail, because sadly sometimes the emails do make their way into the junk email box rather than your inbox. But if you haven't yet had the opportunity, it does really only take about 5 or 10 minutes. I would urge everybody to give it a go and let us know what you think in terms of your experience working for CDDFT. The staff survey closes on the 28th of November. I was going to say October, sorry. 28th of November, so still a little bit of time to do some of this. We're currently running at around about 26-27% of the organisation have responded. Not great. Ideally, we would want that certainly to be up over 50%, I think was the ambition that we tried to set ourselves this year. Really, really important that we do hear from all parts of the organisation as well. And certainly last year, we had an improved response rate compared to the year before. But more importantly for me, there was parts of the organisation that hadn't previously responded in the numbers needed to generate a score. And that's as important, certainly when we're looking at some of the trends that start to appear and some of our responses to what you identify as part of your staff survey completion. So a little bit of work to do. Please encouraging other colleagues, team members to complete the staff survey score. We're slightly behind where we were this time last year in terms of the percentage completion rate. So it would be great to get that back up, at least comparable to where we were last year, if not completely smash that figure out of the park, as it were. There are some prizes to be won as well. So when you enter your staff survey, you do get the opportunity to enter into the prize draw. 3 prizes of £200 worth of gift cards are still available. So some of you may be lucky enough to just get that additional bonus before Christmas. But please do think about taking the time, as I said, completely anonymous, but it's really helpful in terms of us gaining that feedback from you across the organisation in terms of what we need to do to improve our work across the trust. Thank you very much. I think hopefully I'm handing back to Steve.
I didn't know you were, but that's fine. I'm going to hand to Catherine in a second, because Catherine wanted to just, I think, encourage colleagues around winter vaccinations. But I just wanted to make a quick comment on the staff survey piece, which is to acknowledge, I agree with everything Andrew has said. I also think it's important that we acknowledge that we've had feedback that colleagues don't always feel that we listen and don't always feel that we act. So I appreciate that that we've got work to do to kind of build confidence and trust in that regard. Hopefully we'll start to achieve that over the coming months and years. But we really do want to hear your perspectives through the staff survey and also through all of the other mechanisms as well. And we'll need to think carefully about the feedback that we get this year and how we take account of it, perhaps in a different way than we have in the past. So that was, I just wanted to add a couple of quick points there. As a little, this might not be funny at all. I have a particular interest in vaccination because of my previous job. I was the National Director for Vaccination and Screening. So all of my old colleagues have been asking about our flu vaccination rates. I am needle phobic. I tend to pass out when I have an injection, and I tend to fit when I pass out. So that's all terribly exciting. But I have had my flu jab, and the Oc Health colleague who did it for me was brilliant. I did not pass out and I did not fit. So a bit of a success for the first time in however many years. Anyway, Catherine will say this in a much more professional way.
So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Catherine Byrne, Executive Director of Nursing, Midwifery and AHPs. And I just wanted to use this opportunity just to sort of share with you where we are in terms of our winter vaccination programme as well. We are looking to try and work with comms in early inception around how we showcase to you how we are doing in terms of our performance around the vaccination. As Steve's just described, our current rate is at 39.1% in terms of the uptake. I guess the key message for me that I do want you all to take away is that these are there to safeguard you, to help you do your job, to make sure you're looking after yourselves, and also to be able to look after our patients, but also for your friends and family who you will come into contact with over the winter period. There are multiple sort of roving clinics and colleagues who are going around the organisation. It's very well publicised in terms of the communications and also on the closed Facebook page. So I would really recommend and ask for your support in terms of making sure that you've got the opportunity to look after yourselves over the winter period to be able to deliver the services that we deliver, particularly around the flu campaign. And thank you. I'll hand back to you, Steve, for questions.
Okay, so I'm conscious that we'll keep going for now, and if colleagues need to drop, that's absolutely fine. But there's a few questions that I think we should try and make sure we've dealt with, or at least started to answer. So, Lorraine, I think you're going to pick up Rob's question about catchment area, and then I'll take a couple of the other questions that are in the chat box as well.
I am. Thanks, Steve. And Rob, thank you for dropping that into the chat. I think in line with the NHS Constitution, clearly we will aim where possible to provide patient choice. Sometimes there's nuances underneath that, Rob, and some services, if it's an onward referral for a patient, it's not always a choice, but clearly from our perspective, we do where possible try and provide patient choice. There's some commissioning nuances, which I think you're probably aware with physio, but I think what would be really useful is trying to work through some of those individual nuances where actually we might be losing sight of patients in the middle, and making sure that we do support where possible that patient choice element. So more than happy to pick up with you individually and collectively, Rob, with some of our teams, if there is some specific examples where we think we're not necessarily adhering to that, where we think we could and where we think we can improve. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Lorraine. And just to build on Lorraine's point, so patient choice is going to be really important as part of the 10-year plan. So notwithstanding the arrangements that we're currently working with, we'll want to make sure that we're positioning CDFT as a place that people want to choose and do choose, irrespective of where they may live. So, as Lorraine said, there's some current issues that we need to work through, but we need a mind eye on 10-year plan and the important role of patient choice in there. So, Lorraine, I wondered if you and Catherine might want to comment on the issues around patients who are in temporary escalation areas. I think, just as a hand back to you, just to say to colleagues, look, this is something that none of us feel proud about, and I know it places a burden on colleagues in clinical environments, and that patients and families find it very difficult. It is part of our approach to managing risk across the organisation, but that is not an excuse for it. Lorraine and Catherine will answer more eloquently than me, but one of the things I really want to try and see if we can work together on are changes that we can make that are within our control to try and reduce the requirement for patients to be in temporary escalation areas. And one of the areas, it's dead easy to say and hard to do, but the timing of our discharges is really late. That's not really great for patients, you know that as well as I do. There'll be a whole bunch of reasons for it, but most of those will be reasons we can work on. Not everything, but many will be in our gift. And if we can try and have a bit of a collective brain on the changes that might bring forward our discharges, that would wouldn't eliminate, but it would reduce our current levels of patients who are in temporary areas that none of us would really want our family members to be in. But Lorraine, Catherine, you comment.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Probably the first thing to say is please be assured this is a conversation that I think comes up daily with exec colleagues, particularly myself Catherine and Shafi. We're in exactly the same position as you. We do not want patients to be in temporary escalation spaces. We do not want patients or our staff to be providing care in corridor. It's not a good patient experience, and we share your concerns around the privacy and dignity of those individuals and for their family members who witness that care that is not necessarily taking place in the place that we would seek any of our own loved ones to be cared for. So please, probably the first thing for me to say is please be assured this is a daily conversation that we have to try and make sure some of the work that the teams, and no doubt some of those individuals are on the call, are trying to do to improve and reduce the occurrence and the number of patients that are cared for in this environment. There's a lot of ongoing improvement work, and I think hopefully some of you are aware of that. If you're not, then we need to improve how we're communicating with you with some of the improvement work streams we've got ongoing. We're part of a national work stream, which is GIRFT Get It Right First Time, which is now moved into your emergency care pathways, not just on planned care. And we're working really closely with the national team in some key areas. Some of that is about alternative conveyance from the front door and patients not attending ED. Some of that is around process in our emergency departments, and is the changes in how we can do that. Same day emergency care, frailty same day emergency care, and trying where possible to have patients cared for in the right place. And if patients don't need to be admitted, not admit them and alternative convey. Steve touched on one of probably the key areas, and if you're not aware, we've probably got about 80% of our patients on a daily basis that leave site, leave this organisation. Now we're in winter, in the dark, so post 5 o'clock, 80% on days of our patients actually move off the acute sites when it's dark, sometimes going home to empty houses. So I think that discharge improvement work definitely is within our gift to improve, and something that the teams are working on as a key area. I'm going to hand you over to Catherine and Shafi just to share their own reflections and probably some of the support, particularly for our nursing colleagues who are at the front line, and 90% of the time the individuals who provide the majority of the care to these individuals. Catherine.
Thanks, Lorraine. Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree with what Lorraine and Steve have both said, is that none of us want to be in the position where we've got patients in temporary escalation spaces, and we absolutely all need to work together around all of those things that Lorraine's mentioned, around trying to make sure that we don't end up in that position of having patients in temporary escalation spaces. And we are all committed from an executive team perspective around trying to support the operational and clinical teams in terms of delivering against that. And as Lorraine's mentioned, there is a wider quality improvement piece, and we will be doing an update. I think it's early December, Lorraine, isn't it, that we've got something in the diary for that. And actually, the many of the answers lie in the warden departments themselves. So if there isn't anything that you think that we can do to support driving through improvements, please tell us, because we don't always know the answers to everything. So we absolutely do want to hear from you as to how we can try and support our patients to be able to minimise the number of patients who we have in temporary escalation spaces. It is, on a professional, on a personal level, very humbling to hear patient stories and hear the staff stories around how everyone feels around patients who are cared for in those areas. Shafi and I had I would say it was a privileged conversation with a patient who had been in a temporary escalation space to understand that patient's experience just 2 weeks ago. And it was a very humbling conversation to hear and to understand that person's experience. As I say, none of us want us to be in that position. What we do try and do is make it as safe as possible for the wider organisation piece, as Steve's mentioned, and also the system. Excuse me, about putting in place things like the point in time assessment and making sure that we have the acuity recording through Safe Care Live around staffing perspective as well, around looking at that holistic picture around trying to minimise the risk to our patients and also to our staff. And I know, Shafi, you want to come in a little bit further as well, don't you, around patients in test spaces. So I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Lorraine. So I'm a back of house physician, so I'm well aware of the complexity and the stresses that comes along with temporary escalation beds. So until a couple of weeks ago, I was a physician of the week for my ward, and it's not nice to have patients in those temporary areas. It's poor patient experience. I wouldn't want to be in that situation. But the reality on the floor is that I just want to remind all of us, including myself, that ED is everyone's problem. As an organization, we need to embrace the acute pathway that, yes, activity has gone up. There are many things that we'd like to change, but it's not within our gift at the moment. And at the core of it, it's about patient safety. So if we're going to practice evidence-based medicine based on the GIRF data, so Chris Moulton, who's the guru for ED and urgent emergency care pathway during the recent GIRF visit, we asked the question. I remember discussing the point about, yes, there's a lot of evidence about increased mortality for those patients who are residing in ED. These are our DTA patients. The longer they are in ED, the higher the mortality is. So we did ask the question, is there any evidence out there that, what about our TES patients in the back of house? Whilst no doubt that the experience is poor, that's not how we want to look after our patients, but as far as the mortality signal is concerned, it is just as it is compared to any other patient in the back of house. So that's evidence-based medicine. Now, obviously, I'm not going to use that as a reason why we should continue to this. We have to look at pathways. We need to work collaboratively to see how we can offload ED, because if we can help ED, then we can reduce the number of TES patients. And then obviously working with our stakeholders right across the board in our neighboring trusts. So just to reassure you that, as far as mortality is concerned, there's no change based on evidence-based. Yes, we want to improve quality of care, and we will work towards that. But I really would want everyone to recognize that these patients shouldn't be staying in ED. We need to create flow. And there are many things within our gift at the back of house that we need to own and help ED so that we can minimize the high mortality that occurs for these patients waiting in ED. But also, there are many things within our gift we can minimize TES beds. And it's just thinking differently of how we manage this situation. And I'm happy to hear suggestions from everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Shafi. I'm very conscious that we're delaying people, but I don't want to. I think we'll just carry on for now, because I don't want to ignore the questions in the chat box. So I'm just going to try and comment on a couple of them, and some we'll have to come back to. So, firstly, Joanne, I think your point about people highlighting things, but things not being necessarily listened to or acted on. Look, I'm not going to promise, because I can't promise that I have a magic wand at all. I think it's important to say, I think we recognise that feedback, recognise that a number of colleagues feel that things are highlighted and that we don't act quickly enough. That is something that Alison and I, and alongside the rest of the senior leadership team and the broader organisation, want to try and fix and make better. I think there's quite a lot about culture and our historic ways of working in there. So again, that's not it's going to change overnight at all, but I completely get the point. If you raise something, nothing happens, then you're less likely to raise something again. Linked to that, I've forgotten the colleague's name, apologies. I can't see, I've lost my thing. But there was a suggestion, I think, or a question about, are we going to think about culture in a different way rather than just through the staff survey? And you're absolutely right, the staff survey sort of fulfills a certain role. Let us come back to you on that, because we have some existing mechanisms through the teams in need of support, but one of the things we're thinking about following the feedback from the governance review is how we understand culture in our different sites, our different teams in a bit more detail and in a slightly different way. So no complete solution, but actually we are interested in a discussion about that. There's been some helpful points about booking and loss to follow up. I certainly don't think we have all the answers right this very second, other than to say two things. One, so on the workflow issue in the EPR, I think it was Sarah, I'm not sure what flagged this. There's been a bunch of email trails over the last 48 hours, and actually quite a lot of clinicians have flagged this to me as I've padded around. So we're going to try and do a bit of work on EPR more generally to understand the safety issues and the configuration issues that we've got, and then to try and work our way through fixing some of those. We haven't really optimised the EPR, having put it in, and we've got a number of challenges I think that people have highlighted that we need to address. We need to try and work out how we fix some of the immediate safety issues around loss to follow-up and results going to different inboxes. So please, if you're willing to help us with that, that would be fab. Please get in touch because we will need colleagues' help. A colleague has asked about the news item that was on this morning about the loss of admin in, well, I think the question's phrased as admin and clerical jobs. So that is about NHS England and the Department of Health coming together and changes to integrated care boards. So colleagues at CDDFT are not directly affected by that specific announcement. That's about colleagues who work in the ICB, NHS England and the department. We of course have to think about our own financial position and how we become, as Alison said at the beginning, a more financially sustainable organisation. But there's nothing that announcement doesn't directly impact here at this point. A colleague has said there's loads of good ideas and how do we get involved in making change. I'll probably get into huge trouble for saying this, but actually we're an organisation where everything has come up to the exec team and we've sort of operated with a bit too much command and control. We're the wrong people to make most of these changes because we don't have the solutions that you do. You do the work, you will see the ways to improve it. So bearing in mind the sort of twin phrase of think like a patient, act like a taxpayer, we need to try and get to a place where people have more autonomy to act, where you see that you can make something better with thinking about our financial responsibilities at the same time. There's a bit about seeking forgiveness rather than seeking permission. That's going to be a big change for us, and I'm not suggesting everyone runs off and does that straight away, but we need to get to a point where people who are closer to patients are able to make the changes that you can see need to be made. And then there might be some other questions that popped in, but these are the ones I wrote down, and I'm conscious we are now probably eating into other people's stuff. There was a question about incident reporting. I honestly don't know the answer to the question. I'd welcome your views. What I think I have observed about incident reporting is it's not always approached as a learning, from a learning perspective. And then actually the phrase, we use the phrase incident reporting in the whole of the NHS, so it's not specific to CDFT. But we don't always take the opportunity to highlight something that has happened at the time it happens, and that's a missed opportunity. So again, I think some of it is about fatigue with feeling that nothing changes. So again, I think it's part of our broader work. But they're a really important kind of smoke signal safety system, and so I would like you to tell me what you think would make a difference and encourage people to flag things that haven't worked as well as we would like, and then importantly to learn about what we need to do. So I think there are a load more questions in the chat. That's great, by the way, because actually that's the purpose of these sessions. We probably did a bit more talking than intended this time. So we'll keep going with these on a weekly basis. For the ones that we haven't answered, because I'm going to suggest that we probably do draw to a close at this point. The ones we haven't answered, we'll come back to, and the video or the recording of this will be available for colleagues. We'll also try and post any answers to questions that we haven't dealt with in the meeting, because I don't want this to become a place where people raise stuff and it kind of just disappears. But people were quiet at the beginning, which is completely understandable, and then we've had a bit of a rush, which is brilliant, and I'm really grateful. But I think we probably will have to come back to those things. So with that, can I say a huge thank you to people who've given up their time to be with us and for us to be with you. Please give us some feedback on how you would like to tweak this, or if you think it's a complete waste of time, that's also helpful feedback. But for now, we'll keep going with them. I personally have just learned a load of stuff already, which I might not have learned otherwise, and we'll try and pick some of those issues up. We will try and avoid just collecting all of them, so we'll want to work with you to make some of the changes that are being suggested. But in the meantime, as I say, let us know what you think. We'll tweak as we go. And apologies for some of the technical issues that we've had. And I hope you have as good a rest of today as you can. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week, which I think might be at 2 or 2:15. But in any event, for those that can join, we'll look forward to seeing you next week, if not before. Thanks ever so much.